It is Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020. Yes, we are in September already. Welcome back to the show. Today we have an awesome guest, Randy Wooton, who is the Chief Strategy Officer and President of Percolate at Seismic. And I'm looking forward to chatting with him, and want to welcome back my co-host, Carlos Ponce, who's chiming in from Cuernavaca. Welcome, Carlos. Welcome back.
Thank you, Tulio. Appreciate it.
So, Randy, for the benefit of those who don't know you, could you please tell us a little bit about you? Give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Thanks, Tulio. It's great to see you and Carlos.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, a tech guy. Been in technology for about 20 years since business school. A variety of companies: Microsoft, Salesforce. I was in one of the earliest digital companies. It was an agency called Avenue A, which then became Aquanov, and so have been on this cutting edge of digital applied to marketing for 20 years. Most recently, the last couple of gigs, I was CEO of Rocket Fuel, which is a big AI-powered, programmatic display advertising company. And then we sold that and then went to another company called Percolate, which is in the marketing space. Spent about 2 years there, and we sold that to another company called Seismic, which is where I am right now. And so Percolate is a seismic company. And I've continued on as Chief Strategy Officer for Seismic, and then continue to oversee Percolate. So 20 years focused on creating technology solutions for marketers and advertisers. And so very interested in the topic for today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show because you and I met in 2004 or 5, I think, in the early days of the ad tech when you were at Microsoft. And those were the days when Facebook, Salesforce, and everybody else was trying to figure out how to monetize their business. And I remember connecting Facebook with you guys at Microsoft at the time to help them monetize the early days. So we're dating ourselves here, but those were the early days of the ad tech industry. It's come a long way since. So Randy, great to have you. Tell us a little bit about Seismic and how did that come about where Percolate was a good fit? Tell us a bit about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I would say that what both Percolate and Seismic believe is that content, the assets that you're creating and distributing across multiple channels really are at the heart of the customer experience, meaning that people aren't necessarily responding to advertising. That was the big challenge, right? When I go to speak at conferences, I do my little party trick, which is, okay, everyone who's shared an ad in the last month, raise your hand. And the whole audience, no one raises their hand. But then you ask, hey, how many of you have shared a piece of content? So a ebook or a white paper or something that was compelling, and a large percent of the population in the conference will raise their hand. So that idea of how do you build compelling content with a purpose was consistent with how Percolate was set up, which was to help marketers orchestrate marketing, and how Seismic was set up in terms of getting that content into the hands of sellers. So Seismic is a sales enablement technology which helps sellers know what to show. So if they're working with buyers through the buyer process, what is the right content to use given all the other touch points that have happened during that buying process?
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to learning more because clearly the world of sales and marketing has changed dramatically, and even more so in the past 6 months due to this pandemic. And the old tricks just don't work anymore. So let's figure out what the new is. Carlos, what's the topic for today? Let's go right into it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tulio, and thanks to our guest. Tulio, today we're going to be speaking about, or the topic is aligning sales and marketing teams during times of change. Or put it in another way, how to turn your sales and marketing teams from road warriors to digital warriors. So that's the topic that our guest chose for today. So first question for our guest, for Randy, welcome to the show. Why did you choose this particular topic? Why did you think it was relevant for today's day and age?
Well, clearly, all field sellers who are used to going, and I'm primarily a B2B guy, enterprise guy, which presupposes that the sales teams are people who are usually deployed into the field, into the regions or the cities where the deals are going to be done. And up until 6 months ago, the way you made deals was you went and met with prospects, or if you were trying to do an expand or upsell, you met with your customers and helped them see the light. And so I think what has changed radically, and certainly not the first person to say this, but all field sales is now inside sales. And so what field sellers had prided themselves on in terms of relationships and understanding the nonverbal communication and being able to work the angle in the meeting, that's no longer part of their bag of tricks. And I don't know when that will become a reality again. When I think about our own prospects and customers, do they really want me jumping on a plane in SFO and flying to New York and getting off at JFK and taking the subway into the city and going up an elevator and meeting them in their office? I mean, I don't know when that is going to be a reality. 2 years, 3 years. So I do think we are in a transformational time in terms of, specifically for sellers, how are they going to engage with prospects and customers? And then with marketing, how are they going to support sellers in this new world to drive the revenue?
So obviously
Excellent.
things have changed, and like you said, everyone's inside sales right now. But how does the role of marketing also need to evolve? I mean, the whole system was set up to support the sort of opener and closer mindset, right? You had an opener and you had a closer. The field sales were often the closers, and marketing played a very different role than they need to play today. So how does that change? What's changed? What's working and what's no longer working?
Right. So I think, marketing, one of the big challenges with marketing and the problem we were trying to solve at Percolate was you have lots of different sub functions within marketing that need to coordinate, especially in the time where you're having basically near real-time engagement with your prospects. So the advent of social media led to conversations unfolding about your brand across media like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, et cetera. And marketers, enterprise marketers in particular, having to move from a waterfall marketing model where they're planning campaigns on a yearly basis. I mean, I remember being at Microsoft, we were talking a little bit about that. We'd bring all the marketers from around the world together for this big kickoff. It's hundreds of people. And then you would do these quarterly check-ins on how are those campaigns executing over the course of the year. Well, that model is broken. It's radically changed in terms of people having to respond to real-time events unfolding. How do they change their message? How do they change their strategy and communicate? So I think marketing moving from waterfall to agile is one of the primary shifts we've seen. And that includes a different approach to their methodology, so agile, the technology, so what technologies help them orchestrate their campaigns, and also data. How are they associating data, unstructured data, with forms of content, for example? And so I do think marketing has had a shift more broadly to just address the digital transformation. Specifically in COVID, what you're finding is like field marketing. What does that mean? We don't do conferences anymore. You don't go and create a forum for sellers to show up and do their pitch. It's digital, and we don't even know if digital webinars are really working that well. They shift other traditional formats all into digital. Right now, everyone's buying display ads and search, et cetera. And so I think you're getting this real congestion in the digital space, and people are overwhelmed with marketing because everyone's doing the same thing. So I think some of the established ways of thinking about marketing and the specific tools are being changed, especially for enterprise marketers.
So is it safe to say that you no longer can afford to work independently as a marketer from the sales organization? So what becomes the unifying thing between sales and marketing, and who drives it?
Right. So I think that it's revenue. And I think so. 2 data points. One is, I think it's from Forrester or Gartner. They say when you interview large company sales staff and marketing staff, only 8% say that they're aligned, meaning 92% are in silos and not aligned. And one of the interesting things we find at Seismic is we have customers we share customers across Percolate and Seismic, and we are often introducing the teams together. We're working with the marketing team, and Seismic's embedded with the sales team, and we're introducing those employees to each other and saying, hey, you could be working better together. So I think there are some antiquated structures that are going to take a while for enterprises to overcome. I think the thing that's unifying them, Tulio, is revenue, meaning that B2B marketers are being held accountable more for pipeline generation and ultimate revenue impact. I think that's why you saw a lot of investment in technology around attribution technology, ABM technology, because marketers are like, oh my gosh, my rear end's on the line to deliver the dollars. The way you impact that, though, is how do you get more compelling content into the hands of sellers at the right time so that they can engage with their prospects in a really productive and efficient way?
Okay,
Randy,
go ahead, Carl. Somebody have a question. Go ahead. I'll hold on. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I got a question, Randy. Well, we're talking about turning sales marketing teams from road warriors to digital warriors, and you mentioned something that struck my attention, which is you use the word congestion right now.
Mm.
So, and I can understand that, what I would like to ask you is, how do you think that we could precisely do that, overcome the overabundance, the overflow of you said also everyone's doing the same thing, everyone's trying to use the same approach because that's what there is, right? We don't do conferences anymore, we don't travel as much. So how do we overcome, how in the technical space, in the tech space, how do we overcome the overabundance of the congestion precisely of everything that's going on out there, so that we can actually accomplish something worthy, something of value, something that's going to eventually turn into results? How do we do that?
Well, a couple of things. One is, so the old adage, especially in digital advertising, is getting the right message to the right person at the right time. When I think back, my first exposure to that was from Don Peppers and Martha Rogers in their book, The Future of One-to-One Marketing, which came out in 1995, and I probably read it in 1997. I said, this is it. This is the future. If you can get the right message to the right person at the right time, you're going to have a compelling experience and you're going to break through the clutter. It only took us, 30 years to have the technology advanced far enough that now we can really do that. And so I think, to your question, Carlos, the opportunity is, how do you know where the prospect is in their buying cycle, such that the content you're sharing is compelling for them to engage with? And I think what gets really complicated in the B2B space, and why you need technology like Seismic and Percolate, is it's an enormous amount of data to be tracking, number one. Number two is, there is no linear buyer journey. People may come to a website, they may see an email, they may come back to the website, then they talk to a salesperson, then they go back to the website, they may go to an event. And so the idea that there's a linear sales funnel, or you walk down the sales funnel, or a linear buyer journey, is just false. The other thing is that it's a lot of these decisions, especially for enterprise SaaS, are not made by one person. It's a buying committee. And so I think, Carlos, the opportunity is to try to understand where people are in their buying journey, or committees are in their buying journey, based on the content they're consuming. That means there has to be data, we call it metadata, associated with that content. Understand what its structure is, what are its components, and then being able to track how people are engaging with it. So one of the products that Seismic has, which is amazing, is called Live Docs, which blew my mind when I saw it, was you can actually send out this PowerPoint, and you can see, you get feedback based on where the buyer spent time on the PowerPoint. So you may have 4 sections on your PowerPoint. They may have spent 15 minutes reading section 1 and nothing on section 2, 3, or 4. That's gold. If you know what section one was, you can then come back with new content, sort of building on that. Or you can ask them a question because you thought section 3 was going to be really, impactful for them. Oh, why didn't you like section 3? So this idea of having a visibility into how the people are interacting with the content, we've never been able to do before. And so I think that if you're able to create this personalized, immersive experience for the buyer, they'll appreciate it. But you got to get a hook. And I think the hook comes from hard sales work, which means you do a research on your buyer, you do research on the company, you come up with a commercial insight that's going to make someone say, you understand my business, I'm willing to respond to your email or your phone call.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Peppers and Rogers. I mean, they sold us on the one-to-one dream, right? It's interesting how it just hasn't happened until recently because of technology. So if I'm hearing correctly, and I subscribe to this as well, forget the idea of the marketer and the seller as separate entity, and think of it as, how do I create influence with these channels? The salesperson could be a channel, the website, the social media platform could be a channel. But as a marketer, I need to create content that's relevant, that is tailored specifically to the end user in mind. And that doesn't just happen without the relationship that, i.e. the seller, creates and develops. So this new partnership requires a very different approach, which basically turns everyone into influencers, and also involves the customer, right? To be able to identify what they're liking, what they're reading, so that you can further customize or further drill down on what's relevant to them. This is a huge shift in traditional sales and marketing models, right? And a lot of companies are ill prepared for it. And there's a lot of egos as well from people who've been doing this for a long time. We're like, I don't want to do it that way, right? I don't want to just be a pusher of content. So what advice do you have for those who might be struggling with the idea that technology isn't taking over your art as a salesperson, but it's definitely helping you be more effective? How do you help them make that transition? What's been your experience in your company working through organizations that have had that kind of pushback?
Let's see. So one is the classic sales cycles. You look for other customers that you currently have that are like them, and you talk about the journey that they went on, and you show the facts. So building one of those business case or solution value analyses, it shows the benefits. So you get the overarching sell in. And then as you go through adoption, I think this is one of these products, Seismic product in particular, where the proof is in the pudding. When sellers start to use it and they start to be able to see what's happening. And the other thing that happens with the technology, it recommends content for the sellers based on the opportunity and some of this other natural language processing, machine learning that we added into the system. So there's a personalized experience for the seller. When I open up Seismic, it says, "Good morning, Randy." And I've got my opportunities on the right, and you can start to see which content the system is recommending for me to use. So it benefits me in terms of an immediate time savings, because I'm not having to search through some enterprise dam to find content and modify it and make it my own. I've got content that has been personalized for me, for my opportunity, that I can use and deploy. And then based on these insights, these live insights that we're seeing, you're able to see people interacting with it. And so I think we are getting to a level of automation with the content recommendation, and sellers also know it's on brand. You know, one of the big challenges sellers have is like, hey, I want to kind of modify it, but I'm not sure if I'm still within the guidelines from marketing. When you have a system, Percolate, tied into Seismic, that allows you to do that, you get the approvals and the governance and brand insurance, so that you can have sellers. I describe it as sellers being their own publishers, is they're able to create their own brand online. They're able to activate through the communication channels, and they're able to use it in a brand compliant way. And so I think the value is demonstrated at the user level, rather than marketers using it and saying, hey, you salespeople, you got to use this because we want you to be on brand, on message, within our compliance guidelines.
All right. So if you're in sales, you're no longer at the mercy of what the CMO and their team are working on. You basically have that capacity in your pocket.
Yep.
Am I oversimplifying it?
No, I think that's right. I mean, that's what we talk about, is the efficiency you get back from having to do all that work on your own, is now you have more time to do what you want to be doing, which is some of the research around the prospect or the situation, and trying to gauge in compelling sales motion. And so we're fully integrated in Salesforce. So you could do this all within the Salesforce interface and have the content recommended on the opportunity. But that was one of the big bets that Seismic made, was to be part of that ecosystem. So as the salesperson or the CRO is thinking about, how do I equip my sales team with the best tools possible to help them know what to say, know what to do, and know what to show, the Percolate Seismic combination really helps them on the know what to show. And then you complement that with sales readiness technology, which is coaching people. And today it's becoming more about doing Zoom call ride-alongs versus what you and I did, Tulio, is you jumped in a car and went with your rep to the different clients. Now you can have a much greater impact across more people as a head of sales or sales manager, because you can tap right into the virtual conversations or watch them later at night. But you put those two pieces together of sales rep could have better done the meeting. You can also help coach them on how they could use content or different types of content to better effect during that meeting or as a post follow-up.
Okay, so years ago, not too long ago, the concept of the CRO came to life, the Chief Revenue Officer. The promise was a new role that would focus both on the short-term and the long-term value of the organization. It was sort of a hybrid between a sales leader, a marketing leader, and a strategy officer, right? That was the intent behind it. But without these tools and technology, you ended up just having another layer who ended up hiring a head of marketing, who ended up hiring a head of sales. So it just became another layer with those traditional functions in place. What I'm hearing, though, is with technology, you could actually replace those traditional functions and enable each seller to basically have this capability on hand. So what happens to the traditional CMO role? How does their role evolve in this whole picture?
Yeah, I don't think there's one answer. What I would say, just picking up on the CRO, when I've seen CRO roles be effective, and I don't know if I was good, but I had one at one point, was a CRO, was I think you actually have to have sales, service, and marketing especially, and I think this is directly applicable in a technology SaaS type of experience where a lot of your revenue comes from the annuity business. So it's almost this shift and focus to customer marketing. How do you make sure that they adopt? How do you make sure they renew? How do you make sure that they buy more? So the net retention, right? The classic Salesforce model. So I think if you're in that type of industry or that type of go-to-market motion, you roll your marketing person in under a CRO, and you also roll your services person under the CRO. And then you're responsible for shifting resources and dollars from how much you're going to focus on new logo acquisition versus customer activation versus adoption versus what are you going to invest to get the renewal and net retention. Those two metrics that we always hold on to, the gross retention and the net retention, and how are you adjusting the spend to drive those two things. But I think to your question about CMOs, I think you could still have a CMO who's kind of your brand guy or gal who's helping with corporate branding, corporate messaging, corporate positioning, analyst relations, maybe PR. But when you think about demand gen, pipeline gen, the no kidding, how many dollars am I going to put into marketing versus BDRs? I think it's better to have it all report up to one person because then they can make those trade-offs. I think you get in this internecine battle between salespeople saying, I need to own the BDRs, and those are our most effective outbound lead gen, especially in today's world, right? Trying to get people on the call versus respond to email, you may double down on BDRs. Marketers would say, oh, well, the BDRs are not going to get any action unless we're driving top of the funnel MQLs. And so I think you end up in a lot of arguments unless you have someone who can be commercially minded across the full customer experience. So from how did they come into the system and prospect? How did they get lit up as a customer? And then as you go into time of renewal, what is the types of communication that you're doing to make that a seamless renewal because you've delivered value? You articulated value at the beginning of the cycle, you delivered value at the end of the renewal, and it's documented and it's proven.
Excellent. Well, for marketers and sellers out there, it's time to rethink the way you position yourselves in the marketplace and what tools you use and the role content plays and how critically important content becomes in how you use it and when you use it that is appropriate. So definitely worth checking out to learn a bit more for those who are watching. Let's shift a little bit as we're coming up on time, Randy. You've had a number of exits. You've been a multiple-time CEO. I've had a successful career so far. What's it been like in terms of your journey toward picking the right company to go and sell the organization, and then essentially create a model for the employees to step into something new? What's that been like for you? Anything you've learned that you'd like to share for any organization that's in the process of doing that?
Yeah, look, I've gone into a couple situations when someone's looking for a CEO, something's wrong, right? If the company is on a tear, that means the current team is probably doing great, and the investors are going to stay behind them and want that to be the winning team. So I think the thing as a CEO, turnaround CEO, is you come in and you have to diagnose the situation and figure out, is it a product market fit issue? Is it a marketing issue? Is it an execution issue? And so a lot of that diagnostic, I've learned more now having done it twice. I think the thing that I'm continue to be most inspired by is the book Play Bigger, which is all about category definition. And I think if you can get a company super clear on the problem it's trying to solve in the market for a specific ICP, ideal customer profile, i.e. who is it that you're going after? What are their needs? What are their wants? How does your product solve that? And how do you define your category? It can really lead to focused efforts. And for example, I came in, we were in at Percolate, I think we were in 18 different verticals. And I said, okay, stop. We need to focus on 3 or 4. And so we just redirected all of our energy on 3 to 4. We used to be in a world of sales funnel where we would go out and talk to anybody. I say, nope, we need to do sales pipe. We need to figure out who are the set of customers that we want to go after, who are the people at those customers we want to go after. And those are some big bets and hard and take time. And so Tulio, I think the book Play Bigger is one I really like. I think there's a really compelling story around category. Sequoia was one of our investors at Percolate, and they always talk about investing in category leaders. And so I think for companies at that stage, Series A, B, C, as you're trying to get product market fit and then scale, having that as a playbook can be really beneficial.
Sounds like great advice. When is your book coming out, Randy? You've got to get a book out.
Yeah, you know, I was working on that with a friend. You may remember a guy named Eric Dewar, and we had something out there around the digital marketer and the revolution of, we called it moment marketing, so marketing to the moment. And we got kind of halfway through the book and couldn't get it over the finish line. I think maybe when I finally step down, I'll take a little bit more time to write that book, get it out. I want one, right? I want one published book before. All
right. Well, any publisher listening, hit them up, because that's going to be a good book. Randy, it's been great to have you. It's always great to chat with you, and appreciate the connection and the friendship over many years. Thank you for joining us today. Just stay with us as we wrap up. Carlos, what do we got coming up? We have one more show tomorrow, right?
That is correct, Julio. We'll be speaking with Scott Ford, the CEO and co-founder of Corgibytes, which is a company that remodels software applications to be more stable and scalable and secure. And the topic is going to be communication is just as important as code. Or in other words, as Scott has put it, the idea of a lone developer coding without social interaction or good communication skills is a thing of the past. So I look forward to that one as well. That right here on Dojo Live at 1 p.m. Pacific. As ever, thank you, Tulio, and thanks to our guest today.
Thank you, guys. Stay safe until tomorrow.